All right, well, so welcome everyone to this sort of poster guidance session. We'll give a bit more context around what it's for in a second, but my name's Catherine. I'm the Senior Research and Innovation Manager here at Hampshire and Wight Integrated Care Board. Kate?
Hello everyone, I'm Kate. I'm a Senior Research Fellow and Knowledge Mobilisation Fellow at the Applied Research Collaborative Wessex.
All right, so we're going to crack straight on with the presentation. So, has it appeared, Kate?
It has. It's not in slideshow, but that doesn't matter to me. Can people's, is it? Yeah, that's better. Fantastic.
Has it done its thing now?
It has. So because we're recording this and we're going to show it to other people, I think the easiest thing would be if you want to pop your questions in the chat as you go along, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. But rather than stopping and starting, because people will be watching this later, we'll just crack on. Thanks. Sorry, Catherine.
That's okay. It's like she has read my mind.
Sorry.
So the session obviously is being recorded and it'll be available to be shared afterwards. I say put your hand up at the end using Teams or questions in the chat. We're going to really try hard to avoid using acronyms, but we know that we work in the world of acronyms. So we're going to try really hard to avoid using them. And when you have questions at the end, if you could too, because we know people are coming from lots of different organisations, that would be fab. So why are you here? What is this competition that you're interested in? So we're really looking in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight at holding an Integrated Care Partnership Research Assembly. So what is the Integrated Care Partnership, or ICP? So this is the statutory joint committee which is formed between the Integrated Care Board, the commissioners, the NHS commissioners, the local authorities within Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Integrated Care System. So the partnership brings together a broad range of partners from across different sectors and is responsible for setting the strategy for health and care in Hampshire and Isle of Wight to meet local healthcare, social and public health needs. So it's really anyone with an interest and a responsibility for health. So that is the NHS, local authority, voluntary sector, universities, fire, police, ambulance, anyone with that interest. And then what is the assembly itself? So it's a fundamental part of our system, and it's that mechanism to bring partners and people together to ensure that strategy and delivery remains focused on the needs of the population. It's about sort of taking some engagement to a new level and ensuring people are involved at all stages of this. And a big part of it is about building relationships and looking at how do we solve problems in partnerships and holding the system to account to improve health inequalities and sort of health and social care. And also this will be the first Integrated Care Partnership Research Assembly. There have been a number over the past 3 years, including on workforce, trauma-informed care, digital and data, and children and young people. But this is the first one with a focus on research, innovation, service improvement. So, as I said, the posters itself will be looking at that service improvement, innovation, clinical audit and research, and there are 5 key ICP priorities areas. So these are children and young people, digital and data, good health and proactive care, mental well-being and workforce. And they're the key areas that we're looking for posters for. So this is just going to give you a bit of an overline of the guidelines. Kate's going to talk a bit more about what a poster could be, and then we'll go into the judging criteria as well. So the sort of posters themselves should be an introduction, contain your aims, objectives, what's been achieved so far, and what's hoped for the future impact of your project. It should be suitable for a wide range of audiences. People attending the assembly are going to come from all parts of the system. You're going to have commissioners of services, researchers, nurses, allied health professionals, people looking at policy, people with lived experience from community and voluntary sector. So you want your poster to be as accessible as possible. What we are going to do is following the assembly, all posters will be made available on the ICB website. So another good place to showcase them. And also the competition is going to be judged by a panel of partners from across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, which will include representation from voluntary and community organisations and people with lived experience. So who's eligible, who can take part. So anyone who supports health and social care projects that benefit the population in Hampshire Isle of Wight. This includes researchers from multiple organisations, staff and community members. So you don't have to be an academic to submit a poster to the ICP Assembly. You can be from anywhere in the system as long as you're supporting health and social care projects. We would like it to be a one-pager portrait, and that's sort of in PowerPoint or a PDF, which needs to be in by the 3rd of October this year. We will only allow one poster per entrance. And the other thing is it must cover one of those 5 ICP areas. So you may be doing some really great work on sort of molecular biology, but if that doesn't necessarily fit into one of those categories, we probably will not be accepting those posters. So I'm going to pass over to Kate now to talk a bit more about why do you do a poster? And Kate, just Chris Whitty when you need me to pass along.
Thanks, my lovely Chris. So I think it's really important to think about why we do a poster. So it's really important as healthcare professionals, and I'm a nurse, that we shout about what we're doing, whether it's research, audit, or service development. So you may be a nurse, you may be somebody with lived experience, you may be a community worker, you may be any kind of professional or anyone working in the integrated partnership, but shout about the work that you're doing and tell others about it, because it's the only way that we can learn, learning from each other what went well, what didn't go so well, but we need to tell people about it, otherwise they won't know. So next slide please, Chris. And I always think this is the really hard bit. So in your poster, you're trying to tell a story. You're trying to tell the story of your work. And you've only got this, what did Catherine say, one-page portrait to do so. So it should have a main message. What do you want your audience to remember? So if somebody's walking past, what will they remember from your poster? And it's really important, this sounds really obvious, but it's really important that you yourself know this. So often when we're thinking about a project, and I am as guilty as sin for doing this, I try and cram all the bits that I want to tell people into that project. But try and narrow it down, try and really refine it, and try and think, what is the one key thing that I want my audience to go away remembering? Next slide please, Catherine. So I'm going to take you through the sort of traditional format for a poster, and this is very much reflected in the ICP assembly. So we've got title, we've got authors, we've got introduction, aim or objectives, methods, results, and conclusions. And I'm going to take you through each of those in a little bit of detail, so that it just helps you think about how you put that story together of what you're doing. Next slide, please. So title should be not too long, and a few keywords that answer what you did, where you did it, and why you did it. Titles should ideally be quite eye-catching if possible, but perhaps not as quirky as this one. So this is one I came across in a journal paper, from urethra with shove, bladder, foreign bodies. I think it's a play on From Russia with Love, and I think it's a bit much. So maybe not there, but not too long. And think about your keywords. This is obviously a poster, but if you're thinking about a title for a journal article, you often have keywords that are indexed in electronic databases, and it's really important that you get the right keywords in your title so that your journal is kind of filed in the right place in these electronic databases. But obviously that's not so important with a poster. Next slide please, Catherine. So authors can be a really contentious issue. So Ideally on your poster, you need everyone who's contributed to the project, but that's within reason. So has done a good bit of work towards the project. You can always put people down in an acknowledgement section if you feel that you want to say thank you to someone. So, for example, the participants maybe who took part in your project, if you want to say thank you to them in an acknowledgement section, but you wouldn't put them down necessarily as an author. Remember to include institutions. So I work for the Applied Research Collaborative, but I also work for the University of Southampton. So I would generally put both. I also work for the NHS. So sometimes I would just put my NHS role. So think about which role that applies to this particular project. The first author tends to be the person who did the doing. And interestingly, the last author tends to be the most senior person on your team. So when I was doing a PhD, I was the first author and my supervisor was the last author. And really importantly, make sure that you factor in enough time to get all the authors to agree the poster. So quite often what can happen is you think, eek, the deadline's on, I think it's the 3rd of October, and you've just done your post the night before and you put it in, but then your co-authors haven't actually seen it. So make sure that you have enough time to send it out and to get comments back and to make the corrections. Next page, please, Catherine. So this is where we get to the sort of meat, if you like, of the abstract. So ideally, what you want is some section on background, and you don't want to spend too much time on this, just 1 or 2 sentences describing why you actually did what you did. And ideally, if you can, the gap in knowledge that your project fills. So what was the question that you were answering? Next slide, please. So I really like to have a very clear aim. So what did you aim to do in this project? So you can also put objectives, and it took me ages to figure out the difference between aim and objectives. So aim is kind of your overall intention for the project, and then objectives are the specific steps that you take to achieve that aim. And ideally, if you can link in your aim to that gap in knowledge. So again, you're always thinking about the story. What story are you trying to tell with your poster? I really like this lady, Pat Thompson. She's a sociologist, I think, who does a lot on academic writing. And she writes on a variety of things, from what to put in the results section to how you might start a PhD. So if you're interested in academic writing, I point you towards Pat Thompson. Next slide, please, Catherine. So methods. So methods is basically what you did. Okay, so what did you actually do? And what I always ask myself is, will this information that I include change how others understand my project, or actually what they do? So think about your audience. So we've got a very general audience here. So we might have to be really, really clear and give quite a lot of detail in our methods about what we did and how we did it. Perhaps if you're doing a systematic review, you wouldn't hugely major on methodology, so you wouldn't go into a massive amount of detail on the specific type of systematic review that you did, but you might be more general. You know, I did a narrative systematic review, and then you might feature more strongly on the results. So think about your audience and think about what they will want to know from the methods. Next section, please, Catherine. So the results, again, thinking about your audience, what did you find? What were the findings from your project? think about how they relate back to your aim. So again, telling that really clear narrative, telling you the story of your research or your service improvement or your audit or your case study, and how does it relate to your audience? Next slide, please, Catherine. And then I think this is one of the most important parts, and this is often where I will put my take-home message. And sometimes in a poster, I'll even write take-home message in big letters. So there's no ambiguity. This is what I want you to remember. So what were the conclusions you made from your results? And what are the implications of those for practice, for policy, for patients, for your peers? Whatever the aim of your project is, how do your conclusions answer that gap in knowledge? So complete that story loop. Next slide, please. So my top tips for telling that story is make sure that you know your key message. Think about your audience. Avoid abbreviations. So pretty much the only abbreviation I permit is NHS. So read the poster guidelines. Catherine's been quite good. You know, the poster guidelines are very broad. So I think the only thing that I would say is remember it's portrait, not landscape. I've been to many conferences where I've seen, you know, posters like this and then posters like that. And it's really difficult just to put the poster on a board. And what I generally get is, as well as getting my co-authors to read the poster, I'll get somebody who knows nothing about the subject to read the poster so that they can tell me, A, do they, and this is before it's printed, by the way, A, do they understand it? And B, are there any spelling mistakes that the people, often when you're in a project, you can't actually see the wood for the trees. So it's good to get someone. So I often get my 16-year-olds to have a look at it because she's got good reading ability, but doesn't know anything about nursing. So yeah, get somebody to proofread. Next slide, please, Catherine. So we're just going to show you a selection of posters with no real judgments, apart from perhaps a few, or maybe one that is specifically designed to show you what a bad poster might look like. But just have a think about which poster do you like. I think the important thing is there's no right format for a poster. So with the content, I think, you know, we generally advise quite a structured content, but actually the poster itself, so I'm not very creative and I tend to stick to the same fairly boring template. But you'll see from these, the selection of posters that I'm about to show you, there's a number of different ways that you can present a poster. So Catherine, feel free to jump in on this one. So this is a very busy poster, and it's from example of a scientific poster that actually is supposed to be a bad poster. That's what it's about, gerbils in space, because we didn't want to pick a real life example of a bad poster. So you can see it's just a bit all over the place. So you've got the abstract here, and then you've got introduction right in the middle, and then you go suddenly to the right to talk about materials and methods, and then results, conclusions. There's loads and loads of text. The font is really small, so you can't really read it. The conclusion box is tiny, and the acknowledgement box is quite big. So you can see there are some really obvious things about it that aren't brilliant. Next slide, please. So this is actually an award-winning poster from the Acute Oncology Nursing Society. I have to say I don't love it. I find it quite busy. I also found it quite difficult to follow the flow. So I couldn't see the backgrounds, and then I found the aim and method and results a bit difficult to follow. Just the way they put the metastatic spinal cord compression right in the middle, I found that quite difficult. But I think it's got some really good points. So it's got a clear aim, it's got lots of useful detail, it's got some nice figures, and they have put who they are, but not where they come from. Next slide, please. So this is an interesting one. So they haven't actually put that much detail on the poster itself, but they put QR codes so that you can go and find out more information. I don't know whether you like that or not. I found it a bit like a cheat, but it's, I think, an interesting way of doing it. Next slide, please. So this is one of my favourite posters ever. I've nicked it from Rachel Moses, who's a fantastic consultant physio. She was up in Preston at the time. I think she's now in London. But I really like the way she's done this. So it's a very simple approach to tracheostomy weaning, and really clear introduction. You can see just a couple of sentences, one word, aim, methods that give you some really nice detail if you're thinking about replicating it. Really clear results with just one table, a clear conclusion, and lots of pretty pictures, which I really like, the smiling staff and patients. Next slide, please.
So these are my two examples, which sort of more follow into sort of, these are community-led posters or patient and public involvement-led posters. On the left, you've got one from Sharon Core in Portsmouth, who's created a really interesting poster around social pedagogy, and sort of the idea is it leads you through the story, which she's done very clearly. And on the right is an award-winning poster from the Raising Voices in Research team. I look back on this poster and think there's too much on it, but also understand there was quite a lot they wanted to get across, and they wanted to share as well, but combines that thing around the about, what is the key thing, but also that QR code, knowing that there's probably more we want to share as well, and it can be quite hard to not have it, but they're becoming more common to have QR codes as well. So there you go.
So I'm just going to take you through turning what we've talked about, so turning the content into a poster. So I think it's really important not to be too wordy. So AI is really good for that. So ChatGPT and Copilot can help you refine down word counts if you just want some help in thinking about what are really the key findings of my research or my project. I think headings and subheadings can be really helpful for sections, just so that there's a sort of logical flow. Where possible, I think it's helpful to use bullet points, especially when you've got a load of complex information that you want to sort of chunk up. So use text that's readable from at least 2 meters, and this is probably bigger than you think. So I've had to look at sites online, and they suggest Arial. So there's sans serif scripts and serif scripts, and I think you're supposed to go for the one without the flick because they're easier to read. So Arial's whatever the one without a flick is. So Arial 90 millimeters, I think it is, in bold for titles, 60 bold for headings, and at least 36 for text. Next slide, please. So remember, it's very embarrassing coming to a conference where everyone else is portrait and you've got landscape. So is it vertical or horizontal? Our instructions are it's 1-page portrait. We haven't got a specified size, but I would suggest that you think about something like AO, which makes it nice and big. Think about how you're going to attach it to the poster boards. Catherine, are we going to have any supplies at the conference to help people attach?
Yes,
Yeah,
we will have the attachments and we'll give them to you so you can attach them to the boards that will be there.
okay. So don't worry about that. But I have been at the RCN research conference where they didn't do that, and everyone was sort of running around begging supplies from each other. So it's always good to know that. Next slide, please. And when we're thinking about images, so think about how the image that you're using adds to that story that you're telling. Make sure that the image is of high quality enough so that people can see it, and particularly when it's reproduced on a poster. You need to ensure that you use a caption. If you generate an image from it, for example, from AI, make sure that you reference that, and AI itself will show you how you can reference an AI generated image. Yeah, so images are great, but just use them in the context of the story that you're trying to tell. Next slide, please. So shameless self-promotion, and I always cringe at this, but you don't get much time to shout about your projects, and although the assembly is a day, the time you'll have actually to talk about your project to people, it will absolutely fly by. So what I like to do is miniature versions of my poster, so like a sort of A4 version of my poster with contact information for people to take away. It's probably much more ecologically sound and technologically literate to do a QR code, which is what was suggested on other posters. I put a poster of myself, which I hate, and I've put a really horrible poster of me here where I look like I'm in a sort of prison lineup or something. But it helps people spot you. So if you weren't standing by your poster and someone's absolutely desperate to talk to you about it and they see you wandering around, then they know who you are. And I tend to promote my poster on social media, so I tend to tweet it on X and put it on LinkedIn. So because you've done the hard work, you've made your poster, so why not shout about it as much as possible? And I think, Catherine, we will have the posters up on the ICB website. Is that right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
post event, they'll go up on the
Post
website,
event.
and it'll have the winners will also go up on there too.
Lovely. So I put some further reading from much more creative people than I, if you're interested. But I would also make the offer that if anyone would like, and if anyone just doesn't know where to start, please do drop me a line via the email that you submit your posters to, or I can put my email in the chat. And I'd be very happy to give you a helping hand. I think that's my last slide.
Yes, it is indeed. Yeah. So thank you very much, Kate. And like I said, there's going to be, like I said, we'll do questions in a minute, but there's no stupid questions here. We know sort of, especially putting your first poster together can be really daunting. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you essentially sort of a bit of an overview of what you're going to be judged on, essentially, because I think it's quite fair that you understand maybe what judging is going to happen. So as I said, there's going to be a judging panel of 5 judges for each poster or each theme, and they come from the NHS, they come from local authority, from people with lived experience and community organisations, and from research too. So this is particularly when we're talking about your audience. It's not just going to be an academic marking your poster, it's going to be a wide selection of people. So what we're talking about when you're talking about sort of general, so as we talked about, is that sort of first impression and that visual impact of your poster. Is it, if I walked past it, is it gonna catch my eye? Am I gonna see it and read it? The title is clear and it reflects the contents of the poster. How appropriate, original is the work, and is there enough explanation so I can understand what you're trying to tell me? Grammar, spelling, and use of abbreviations are appropriate. I think, as Kate said, NHS tends to be the one that people will accept, but we like the others to be explained. And also, the author's details are clear, they're in the right position, place of work, and contact details if appropriate. So even though we're saying self-promotion, it will also get you points if you do it all correctly too. So this alignment, and this is really important. So does your poster clearly align with one of the 5 ICP themes? Is it clearly showing this work? Does it celebrate collaboration and partnership? It's called an integrated care partnership. Are you able to show either where you've worked with other people or you've learned from other people and that's developed your work and where you're going to come from? Does it demonstrate innovative practice? Have you thought a little bit outside the box, either by the way you've worked or how you've done things? And is there a clear impact on the health and care of the Hampshire population? This does not mean that you need to have brought down mortality rates somewhere in Portsmouth. This means that the intention of your work is to have an impact in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. That's what we're looking for. It is that you're sort of have got those clear intentions. Content, and sort of Kate's covered this as well, but the content reflects your aims and objectives. It sort of clearly reflects it. You've got appropriate use of tables and pictures. I think reflecting back to the gerbils in space, it's not random what you've got on your poster. Again, clear implications for improving practice, population health, patient care. There's no unanswered key questions. So if you've said, I'm going to demonstrate this, and then don't, that's quite hard to mark against. And the interest and discussion points are clear. So I say a lot of this relates very clearly to what Kate's talked you through. So if you follow those steps, you'll follow the marking, which is really important. Innovation and creativity. So this is only a small section of the marking, but I think it's quite important, especially when we're talking about sort of cross-organisational working. But do you celebrate an innovative way of working in partnership and collaboration? And do you bring in elements of creativity to the project? So creativity isn't always about sort of maybe holding a session where you get people up and dance. It is how have you brought people together? How have you thought a little bit creatively about how you work together as a group and been able to demonstrate it? So, and last but not least, your conclusion. So your conclusion is discussed within the context of what is already known and used. So if you're setting up, you're talking about clinical audit or service improvement, you know what's happening in the system and you're working with it. Any limitations are discussed. I think Kate did mention what didn't work as well. So for example, if you've proven something doesn't work, that's just as important as proving something does. Have you identified future research? Where are you going next? What's the next step for you if it's appropriate? And your clear take-home message is evident. Have I walked away from your poster understanding what you wanted me to learn? And that's what they're sort of the marking criteria across. And I say, well, as the reason we're recording it, so you can go back and double check this and see if you've met all these points. And for final notes, so the deadline for the competition is 5 p.m. on 3rd of October 2025. If your poster is selected, and I know it says selected, but we will be accepting pretty much every poster as long as it meets one of the 5 ICP themes. But if it is, we would really love you to attend the event on the 19th of November at Hope Church in Winchester. You will need to print your own poster for the event. However, there is funding available for community organisations to have their posters printed. So say, for example, if you work with Solent Mind, and they're thinking of putting a poster in, or a community group that works with people with neurodiversity, we have funding for those posters to be printed if they have led the piece of work. I say all poster entrants will be informed of outcomes during the week commencing the 19th of October. So you'll have a month to print your poster. And I said, if there are any questions, we'd love you to get in contact with us where you signed up sort of to this webinar and fire away any questions that me and Kate can answer. But for now, I am going to stop sharing. Okay. And thank you very much. This is going to be the end of the recording.